Let's continue with 4.3. So they tell us that there is another circle. Let's see, there is another circle somewhere. They tell us the center is at 3 and minus 1. So maybe 3 and minus 1, maybe it's somewhere over here. So the center's there. We don't know what the radius is yet, right? Because this is not in the standard form that we want. We'll get it into standard form in a moment. But there's a circle somewhere over there, maybe, right? I'm just doing a random circle just to tell us there is a circle. It's not shown on our picture. We need to go figure out where it is, right? So the way that we are going to figure that out is that we need to get this into standard form. They tell us show that, right? Whenever they tell you show that, they are giving you the answer. You need to show how you get to the answer. You can't use the information given. So the fact that they tell you that the center is at 3 minus 1, you can't use that information, right? That's what we need to end up with. Great, but you can't use it. Okay, so what you are going to do is you're going to take this formula over here and we're going to get it into our standard form. Standard form looks something like this: x minus a, this is squared, plus y minus b, that gets squared equal to r. Okay, so we need something squared plus something squared equals to r. That's what we need. What we need to do in order to get it to that form is to complete the square. Great, we need to complete the square. So what we're going to do is we're going to take x squared, which is given to us in our question, and then there's a minus 6x there. Now we need to add, right, there's a 6x, we need to add something that will help us complete our square. Okay, similarly with the y, let's use the y that we have there. We have a y squared, right, y squared, and then there is a plus 2y, and again we need to add something, right? So for both of those we need to add something so that these three terms and then those three terms is going to generate a bracket squared. So what do you need to add, right? So maybe we remember that half the middle term squared, right? So if you completed the square, then what you we're told to remember was half the middle term squared. So what's our middle term here? It's going to be that minus 6, the coefficient, right? So it's going to be this minus 6, divide that with 2. That's how you're going to get half, and then you're going to square that. Similarly here, right, this one is a positive 2. You're going to half that, and you're going to square that. So this over here is now going to produce a bracket squared. Similarly, this one over here is going to produce a bracket squared. But we included something that was not originally in our question, right? Let's highlight this for ourselves quickly. So this part was not in the original question. Similarly, this one was not in the original question. So it's not okay for us to add things in that was not originally there, right? Unless we do it on both sides. Okay, so here we have an equation, there's an equal to, so we can do this on both sides. So we started out with that 8 over there was an 8 there, so leave the 8 there. But now remember, we added this minus 6 over 2 squared, and that's a square, and we also added this 2 over 2 squared. Okay, right. So what I want us to note is maybe when we learned about the difference of 2 squared, or the difference of two squares, oh, not the difference of two squares, my mistake. Maybe when we learned about completing the squares, right, there we fixed it. Maybe when we learned about completing the squares, we were told you add and subtract half the middle term squared. That's perfectly fine, that's great. I'm doing it slightly different here because it's an equation, because it's equal to something. I can add the same thing on both sides, which is what we've done over here. We added the same thing on both sides. So if I added and subtracted on both sides, oh well, if I added and subtracted half my middle term squared, then I only do that on one side. Okay, so here I'm adding and subtracting half my middle term squared. I'm doing it on both sides. So here, as we've said, these three is going to generate a bracket squared. So let's make a bracket. Let's make a bracket that's going to get squared, and then the y, a bracket that's going to get squared. Our right hand side will simplify later. Okay, so let's go look at these again. This square root of that one goes in here, and what's inside that bracket is going to go over here. So what's inside that bracket? A minus 6 divided by 2, that's minus 3. That goes in there. This one will go in here, the square root of that at least, which is y. And what's inside this bracket, 2 divided by 2, that's going to be a positive 1. Okay, so we've completed our square, but now what we need on the side is we need to simplify that. The 8 is still a 8. Minus 6 divided by 3, or divided by 2 is going to be a negative 3. That gets squared, it's going to be a positive 9. 2 divided by 2 is still 2, is still 1. 1 squared is still just 1. So that's going to be 1. So that is going to give us a 18. Okay, so our equation simplifies to x minus 3 squared plus y plus 1 squared. Right? And now that we have it in that form, we know that our center, right, is going to be this positive 3. And we see a plus 1 there, right? But we should know that there is a minus 1. That's why you see the plus 1. So this minus 1 is in fact your b value. Great. So that is how we proved our center.